So if you've been watching the Premier League for the past couple of seasons, you've probably noticed that all of the newly promoted sides have been going straight back down lately. It happened last year with Luton, Burnley, and Sheffield United all getting relegated, and it looks almost certain that it will happen again this year with Ipswich, Leicester, and Southampton. In the past, it was all about the Big Six in the Premier League, but now many are feeling that it's turning into a Big 17, and that the gap between the current Premier League sides and the Championship hopefuls will just keep getting bigger and bigger. In other words, it's starting to look more like an exclusive club rather than a fair system of promotion and relegation. So the big question is the Premier League turning into a Super League? In this video, I'll be taking you through some of the history of Premier League promoted and relegated teams, looking at why the gap is widening, and talking about where the future of the Premier League could be headed. First, let's touch on the fact that for the past 2 seasons, none of the newly promoted sides have looked good enough to stay in the Premier League. At first, when I started researching for this video, I was thinking to myself, this isn't really a big deal. I bet all 3 promoted sides go straight back down all the time. But as I looked through the past seasons of the Premier League, I had proven myself totally wrong. In fact, we have to go all the way back almost 30 years to the 1997-1998 season when Bolton, Barnsley, and Crystal Palace were all relegated after being promoted the season before. And that's the only other time this has happened in Premier League history. So the fact that it's now about to happen twice in a row is actually extremely rare and very significant. But why is this happening? Well, the first reason that came to my mind is simply that the promoted sides these past couple years have been worse teams than usual. But I wouldn't say that that's true. Let's take Company's Burnley as an example. I know championship success isn't a foolproof way to measure how well a team will do in the Premier League, but I still think it's a good way to compare all these sides. Burnley in 2023 finished on 101 points, one of the best point tallies for a club in championship history, better than sides that have gone on to excel in the Premier League like Wolves in 2018, Fulham in 2022, and Bournemouth in 2015. Similarly, last season's Leicester and Ipswich were also some of the best teams the Championship has seen in the last couple of decades, so I don't think the reason for their downfall is just that the teams are bad. I think it's actually pretty simple. The teams that have stayed up have just gotten better and better. Let's go back a few years to the 2021-2022 championship season, where Fulham, Bournemouth, and Nottingham Forest all got promoted. These are the last 3 sides to actually remain in the Premier League after promotion, and they didn't just stay on for a measly 1 season, they've absolutely excelled, and look how incredible all of these sides are doing this season. And while we're on the table, let's just look at the gap at the bottom. There are 15 points between 18th placed Ipswich and 16th placed Everton, which means Ipswich has to gain 5 wins on Everton to equal their points. That is no easy feat at all. I know Wolves are sandwiched in there and it is possible that they could go down, but they've been on a pretty solid run recently in a really tough month of fixtures, and they look far better than the bottom 3 with their new manager. So as much as I don't like to say it, I am pretty certain that these 3 sides are definitely going down. But then again, people have thought this about Leicester before and look how that turned out. I still don't think they're staying up though. But about the rest of the league, how have they strengthened themselves so much? Well, it's not rocket science, it's money. Yeah, in case you didn't know, the Premier League is by far the richest league in the world at the moment, and that's primarily due to TV money. Let me show you this breakdown in prize money in the Premier League, then let's compare it to some of the other leagues. Now, the Premier League actually does do a good job at splitting its money fairly and not just giving it to all the top teams. Even the worst placed team in the Premier League gets over £100 million. For reference, the league winners of the Serie A get £58 million, the league winners of the Bundesliga get £63 million, and the league winners of La Liga get £48 million. So yes, Sheffield United, for finishing last in the Premier League last season, got more than double the prize money than Real Madrid did for winning La Liga. That's how insane the money in the Premier League is. But again, as I was doing this research, I was thinking to myself, surely this just helps the relegated sides. Even though they go down, they do get 100 million, plus the Premier League does this thing called parachute payments, where if you don't get back up into the Premier League immediately after relegation, you get the amount of TV money you would normally have for 1 season spread out over 2 seasons in the Championship. But let's do some quick math here by comparing 2 sides that got promoted in the 2020-21 season, Brentford and Norwich. Now, Brentford stayed up and Norwich went down. Let's see how much of a difference that made. We're not going to use the exact numbers from a few years ago, but let's estimate that by today's figures, Brentford would have made about £128 million for finishing 13th, and Norwich would have made about £109 million for finishing 20th. So they're pretty even so far. In the next season, since Norwich got relegated, they'd receive just over half their dues from the parachute payments, plus the championship prize money for finishing mid-table, which from every source I looked at is at most around £4 million. So around £65 million for Norwich in total. Meanwhile, Brentford is making another £150 million for finishing 9th. The season after that, 23-24, Norwich would have received the rest of their parachute payments, about £50 million, and another £5 or so million for finishing 6th. Brentford, who finished 16th, would get $125 million. Now let's come to this season, where Norwich wouldn't get any more of their parachute payment and get another $5 million or so in championship prize money. Meanwhile, Brentford, if they finish where they are right now, will get around £137 million. Let's say Norwich do end up getting promoted again at the end of this season. This is the huge wealth disparity that Brentford have earned over Norwich for staying in the Premier League an extra 3 seasons. Brentford has earned £540 million, while Norwich has earned about half of that. So with this example, it's pretty easy to see how a club that stays up for a few seasons can garner a massive financial advantage over a yo-yo club like Norwich. And as this keeps on going, I can really only see the gap getting bigger. Now I know Premier League fans were strongly opposed to the idea of a Super League, but as their teams get richer and richer with more and more billionaire owners signing all the world's top players and knowing that their bottom teams earn more than the champions in other European leagues, to me it seems like they're slowly morphing into one. Of course, I'm not trying to be dramatic here. I know at this stage it's not like that, and that the rest of the top 5 leagues are pretty much on the level of the Premier League. But what about 10 years from now? What about 50 years from now? If the money in the Premier League just keeps getting bigger and bigger, who's to say how far ahead it'll end up? I'd love to know your thoughts on this. Is the gap only going to get bigger? Am I overreacting, and will there be a promoted team to break through again next season? Will the Premier League morph into a Super League, or will the rest of Europe keep up with it? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe to Footballers for more videos like this one.